Yitzhak Rabin's assassination, 9/11, my rabbinic ordination, that one time I stood under the chuppah as a bride and not the rabbi, the day my child was finally born. All of those days shaped me tremendously. Without those moments, I would not be who I am today. They're all swimming around inside of me. And of course, there is now one more. 2 years ago, October 7th, 2023. Unlike those other days, the atrocities of October 7th are never far from my thoughts, and I know that I am not the only one, because October 7th haunts us. We all have our version of what happened that day and what we did that day. This is mine. The WhatsApps started beeping on Yontif, that never happens, and then walking into this shul, and then into this room, and constantly checking into the control room over there with Yuri, watching as the death count of Israelis kept going up. Reb Steve standing here with a spontaneous sermon, trying to figure out what to do later that night on Simchat Torah, to thinking, how do we shelter our children from this? Clearly, that did not happen. Not a single day has passed in 732 that I have not thought about what happened. Between the yellow ribbons and the other jewelry and reciting Achenu at daily minyan, we actively remember October 7th multiple times every single day. And the explosion of anti-Semitism does not help us forget either. 2 years. 2 years have passed. And since that day, my colleagues and I have stood under chuppahs with new couples, and we've offered even more blessings at Ufrufs, and we have blessed babies as they have been brought into the covenant of the Jewish people. We have convened Batei Din and enabled and facilitated countless adults to become Jews now, in these past 2 years, adults who are fully aware of the state of the world. And so many children have become adults at their B'nai Mitzvah. And all of those moments were celebrated in the last 2 years. How? How have we been able to do that? Your spiritual leaders are not heartless. How have we been able to celebrate and share joy with members of our community in a post-October 7th world? How have any of us been able to find joy? Now, obviously, I am not the first to ask this question, nor will I be the last. From this very bima, Reb Steve often says, we live at the intersection of tsa'ar and simcha. We live at this nexus of anguish and joy. He says it a lot. But this morning, I want to offer a slightly nuanced version of the question, dafka for today, when the Jewish calendar and the secular calendar meet up for an unwanted and rather bizarre mashup. How can we find joy on Sukkot? when it coincides with the second anniversary of October 7th? How can we properly do the mitzvah of v'samachta v'chagecha, of being joyous on this holiday, when there are still 48 hostages in Gaza? When we are wondering if Trump's plan will pan out? When we are wondering if the copycats will cause harm? And what is going to happen on college campuses today? We have sadness and legitimate worries. But we read in the Torah, "V'samachta b'chagecha, ata uvincha uvitecha ve'avtecha v'amatecha v'halevi hager hayatom v'ha'almana asher bisharecha." It says in the Torah, "You shall rejoice in your festival with your son and your daughter, your male and your female slave, the family of the Levi'im, the stranger, the fatherless, the widows." The ganzen mishpacha needs to be happy today. You know, we know this. So many of us know that we are literally commanded to be happy. It's a mitzvah. It's on par with taking the lulav and etrog. Rashi explains that Sukkot's joy is emphasized because it occurs at the end of the harvest cycle. It's a time to acknowledge God's sustenance and protection. Okay, Rashi, can you tell us how to get there today? How to get there in our hearts and our heads, when every single one of us in this room cannot possibly forget that today is the 2-year anniversary of the worst massacre of Jews on Israeli soil, on the land that God promised to us. This morning's Haftorah, the Haftarah, it can help us understand how to feel joy when it still feels like we're stuck. To be sure, the Haftarah that was chosen hundreds of years ago for this morning on this first day of Sukkot, at first glance, is very disturbing. At the beginning, it sure as heck is not like V'samachta v'chagecha. It's far from it. This morning, Aaron read from the prophet Zechariah, and the words are hard to hear. Va'asafti et kol hagoyim el Yerushalayim lamilchama, v'nilkeda ha'ir, v'nashasu habatim, v'hanashim tishachavna, v'yatza chatzi ha'ir bagola, v'yeter ha'am lo yikaret min ha'ir. I will gather all the nations against Jerusalem to battle. The city shall be taken, the houses plundered, the women violated, and half the city shall go into exile. 2 years ago, our Shmini Atzeret morning, Simchat Torah in Israel, we watched that prophecy unfold in real time. The prophecy of Zechariah came crashing into our lives. But our tradition teaches that we do not look away from pain. We remember. We remember Pharaoh, we remember Amalek, we remember Haman, we remember Hitler, Yamach Shemam. Why? Because Jewish memory does not erase wounds. It makes them holy. We speak and we remember October 7th, 2 years later, not to reopen pain, because I don't think it ever closed, but to continue to bear witness to it. We remember the murdered. We hold so close those hostages still in captivity, as we are slightly cautiously optimistic about an impending release. And we stand with those whose lives remain in ruins. One synagogue family is taking on the mitzvah of remembering in a very concrete way. They have 2 small boys, and they are adding a bonus name to each. One is getting the bonus name Ariel, and the other is getting a bonus name of Kfir, in memory of the red-headed Bibas family. That is how they are choosing to remember. But we all remember in our own way. But how do we do it today, when October 7th and the first day of Sukkot converge? How are we able to circle around with the 4 species and sing Hallel and enjoy Nash's soup at Kiddush, when 2 years ago we spent this morning crying? So let's go back to the Haftarah. As you heard, thankfully, the Haftarah does not end with horror. Zechariah promises, the prophet promises in verse 16, V'haya kol hanotar mikol hagoyim habaim al Yerushalayim, ve'alu midei shana b'shana lehishtachavot lemelech Adonai Tzevaot ve'lachog et Chag HaSukkot. That God will fight against those who rise up in violence. That one day, the very nations who came to destroy will come to Jerusalem to celebrate Sukkot together. Yes, that's a radical vision that humanity can change. It's suggesting that the people who once raised their hands in violence against us will one day join us as guests and shake the lulav with us in our backyard sukkahs. Halavai! So was Zechariah a prophet or a teller of tales? In any event, that pasuk, that part of the Haftarah, reminds me of the extra line that we say in Birkat HaMazon, the grace after meals, the benching on this Chag. Harachaman hu yakim lanu et Sukkot David hanofelet. May the compassionate one rebuild for us the fallen sukkah of David. This line, this wish, added during joyful meals, carries both the weight of history and contemporary grief. It acknowledges vulnerability while invoking hope. And on this anniversary of October 7th, it speaks directly to our desire for healing and safety and communal restoration. I can't say this line anymore without one image popping into my head. It's of this flimsy sukkah that I saw sort of still standing in December 23, amidst the destruction and the damage when I visited Kibbutz Kfar Aza. To me, that sukkah is the Sukkot David hanofelet. And when I say that line in Birkat HaMazon, I pray that that sukkah and all of the kibbutzim will be rebuilt, and the peaceniks who live near the Gaza envelope will one day again have partners with whom to coexist and move forward with together. On a difficult anniversary of tragedy, invoking this one line expresses communal hope that despite suffering, rebuilding and healing are possible. But still I return to, how can we find joy today on Sukkot when it coincides with the second anniversary of October 7th? The words Chag Sameach are empty today. The Midrash teaches that joy itself is a form of gratitude and spiritual resilience, a way to rise above hardship and connect with God even amid uncertainty. But how do we get there today? Just 2 days ago, UJA needed to use metal detectors and drones and a ridiculous amount of security for the 2-year communal commemoration that occurred in this room. Now, I don't speak much Yiddish, but Siz schwer zu sein a Yid isn't such a foreign idea these days. It kind of is hard to be a Jew in some settings. But this quote by Rabbi Shauna Chandler Leon, this is what's helping me. Maybe her approach will help you too. She said, "It takes such immense courage to be joyful in the face of the darkness that we have experienced since October 7th. What I understand her to be saying is that joy is an act of courage. To sing Hallel, to shake the lulav, to share a meal in a sukkah after October 7th is to declare that even when the world shakes, we will not give up rejoicing. We will be courageous. And it means believing with Zechariah that even in a world of Hamas, a world of violence, we can still dream of nations gathering, not to harm, but to celebrate. And so let us be joyful today because A, it's a mitzvah, and B, we are courageous, forward-looking people. On Shmini Atzeret, we will gather again for Yizkor, both for our loved ones and those that were murdered on October 7th. But today, let's use the tools that we have to attempt to gather the courage and the strength to focus on a holiday called Zman Simchatenu, the festival of our joy. And it won't be easy. I know. So on this complicated day, filled with so many thoughts and emotions, let me leave you with ancient words from our liturgy. Harachaman hu yakim lanu et Sukkot David hanofelet. May the God of compassion truly rebuild the fallen Sukkah of David, bringing comfort to the grieving and broken families who 2 years ago were directly impacted by the tragedies of October 7th. And Ufros Aleinu Sukkot Shlomecha. May the Holy One spread a Sukkot Shalom over the bereaved, over the wounded, over the hostages still in captivity, over the people of Israel, over us, and over all who dwell on earth. And may our fragile sukkahs, swaying in the wind, open to the stars, be a reminder that courage and joy and hope can live even in the shadow of grief. So during this holiday, laugh, eat good food in the sukkah with your friends and your family, because it's a mitzvah and we all have the courage to do it. Chag Sameach.